what that's going to do is it's going to allow this thing to truly be an inverter instead of just using what the previous FLEXX used, which was a transducer to adjust that compressor and fan speed on the outdoor unit.
Valve placement 2-3 ton. It's no longer up inside the unit, so you don't have to use the adapters anymore. It's on the outside of the unit where it's supposed to be. So I think the physical changes we made to the unit to make it more installer friendly are going to make people happier when they're trying to go out and install the equipment.
Welcome to Talking Comfort Live, a show that reminds us just how cool HVAC can be by discussing today's hot topics in home comfort, from learning to laughing and sharing personal experiences to challenging the leading industry narratives. Our show goes deep inside the world of mini splits, heat pumps, and the inverter technology that brings efficient comfort to our products. And you can help us in our quest to make HVAC cool. We're looking for you to be a part of the show. If you have a question, whether it centers around application, installation, preventative maintenance, feature technology, or anything we share on the show, send it our way. We might take it live. Now grab a bucket and take a break. It's time for Talking Comfort Live.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James McIntyre, Senior Director of Commercial Sales. We're going to go down the line and have everyone introduce themselves. First, we've got Justin, the Senior Director of Product. Say hey, Justin.
Hello, I'm Justin Salisbury, Senior Director of Product for GREE.
We have our National Commercial Technical Support Manager, Greg Bruntz.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And then our resident Commercial Sales Engineer, Jesus Fraga.
How's it going, everybody? Jesus Fraga.
All right, first, why do we do Talking Comfort? It's nice to touch base with you guys on a regular basis so that you can see what we have new to offer, offer any tips and tricks to assist you in the field. And, you know, we've all been in your position. If you have watched this before, you've heard me say that many times, but we've all been in the same position. Every one of us has a technical background, extensive technical background. We've all been on roofs and in attics and basements and under houses and all that. We like to share our experiences, and we like to get your experiences as well. And in that vein, what you can do is if you've got a question or a comment at any time, there's a question mark icon to the right of the screen. You can go ahead and click that and submit your questions. So today, the agenda, we got a lot of good things to cover. We're going to talk about the FLEXX R32 product and what's new and what it can do. Daniel will be covering that in a video for us with the latest developments of the new FLEXX and why it's such an exciting offering. Next, we're going to talk about the units that we have that are beyond high walls. So we'll talk about how maybe a customer refuses to put a unit on their wall, but you can still have a great unit that would, you know, fit that application. We've got a bunch of different options to offer, and we'll go through each one of those. And then we're going to give you a the GREE Contractor Assistant app update and how this is going to help with error codes and access to documentation in the field. And we'll also talk about another mini split advantage in avoiding hot attics during our stay heated or chill out segment. We'll have in the recording of this, we'll have links in the description so that you can jump straight into those segments when if you're watching this on YouTube or clips on other apps. All right, again, one more time, the question mark icon to the right of the screen is how you'll submit questions or comments. Everything that you submit makes this show absolutely better. All right, so let's kick off the show with a product update from Daniel. Daniel, introduce yourself and walk us through the latest on the new FLEXX R32.
Hey, everybody. Daniel, Director of Sales, East Coast here. Wanted to share with you about the FLEXX, the new FLEXX R32 version. So we have the FLEXX Ultra in R32. It comes in 2, 3, 4, and 5 tons. We've got a possible 1.5 ton model coming soon. The interesting thing about this model compared to the previous FLEXX model, now we have our S485 communication. So before, if you're familiar with the FLEXX that we had before, it was 24 volt control. And what that was great for was change outs. It was easy to use whatever thermostat you wanted to control the system with. And so it was a unitary replacement option. Now it has RS485 communication additional to the 24 volt communication. So it's inverter driven outdoor side discharge unit, a standard air handler to go with your central air systems. And there's also cased A-coil indoor option to go with dual fuel. Just learned that we have just placed the order for those, so they will be here in the next few months. Everyone's been asking about the A-coil, and so that'll be here soon. Up to 17 SEER, 9.5 HSPF2. The heating range is down to -22, and the cooling range is down to 5 degrees without any additional, like a low ambient kit. So just kind of getting into the technology just a hair. It's a different type of technology than we've seen in the past with the Ultra Heat. And what it's using is a plate heat exchanger. And then instead of just an open closed solenoid to inject the hot gas back into the compressor, it's using an EEV. The GREE FLEXX, like we all know, it will work with any 24-volt heat pump thermostat. The addition is that now the air handler will be coming with the GREE controller. Now, if you choose to use true communication with this system, and we'll talk about how that works in just a minute, this GREE controller will allow you to have all the modes that your mini split does. So you'll have auto mode, you'll have dry mode, et cetera, et cetera. So if you do choose to use the GREE controller with it, you'll have the modes. If you choose to use it just straight 24 volts, you can choose whatever brand of thermostat that your homeowner or you prefer, Ecobee, Honeywell, any of those. So let's talk just a minute about the how it can be controlled. So we've done some testing on this, and Greg was kind enough to confirm this in Atlanta last week. So we do recommend go ahead and hook up the H1, H2 communication in between the indoor and outdoor, because what that's going to do is it's going to allow this thing to truly be an inverter instead of just using what the previous FLEXX used, which was a transducer to adjust that compressor and fan speed on the outdoor unit. Now, if you just use straight 24-volt control, go ahead and hook that H1, H2 up, and that way that outdoor unit can sense what temperatures are on the indoor, return, supply, the pipes, and the coil temperature sensors, and it can make those adjustments a little bit more fine-tuned than the previous FLEXX version could. If you are using 24-volt control, obviously hook up the H1, H2. If you're using 485 control, then you need to use the GREE controller. And also, the awesome thing that's coming up is there's going to be a touchscreen smart thermostat that will actually do the balance point calculation for you. Take a look at this GREE controller that is available. It can also be used as 24 volt, or it can just use the H1, H2 communication. And you've got a lot of different options on that. It does have a dehumidify signal on that indoor unit, and it also integrates the system refrigerant leak signal as well. Now, this smart touchscreen controller is pretty incredible. You'll be able to plug in your kilowatt cost and your gas cost, and you will be able to actually set your cost in this system, and it'll do the changeover for you if you're using the dual fuel system. The other thing about it is it's just 2 wires. So you just run 2 wires to this. So if you have a thermostat on the wall and it's hard to change that wire out, you can just plug this in with 2 wires. You put the standard GREE controller at the unit, and then this actually gives you touch screen control with all of the functions, just like your mini split would have, such as your dry mode, your auto mode, etc. And this is just a little bit of more detail on how that would work. You can see the master thermostat is the GREE controller that they're talking about, and then your touchscreen display. So I'd love to hear from everybody. Type in the Q&A box there and tell us how interested you are in this touchscreen display, and if you think it would be a good option for your customer for a dual fuel application. And of course, with all of your R32 equipment, it's going to come with a leak detection sensor, an A2L refrigerant leak detection sensor on that unit. As you install this, you'll notice the new sensor in there. And then if you lay it to, just depending on horizontal or vertical installation, you'll want to move that sensor. And all you have to do is loosen the screws and move it over to the lowest point. It needs to be at the lowest point. So that is the new FLEXX R32. I'm excited about it. I think it's got a lot of great features, and I look forward to hearing from everyone about it. So thank you.
That was an absolutely great video. Gave us a lot of information about the product. I mean, I'm excited about the product. Any thoughts from you guys?
I just want to elaborate a little bit, if I can, on what Daniel was saying there, just to make sure everything's clear. There's no questions coming in, so maybe I can answer questions before they come in. Just to be clear, so that the GREE R32 Ultra systems will work with the 24-volt thermostat without hooking up the H1 and H2 between the indoor and outdoor unit. But out of the box, they won't unless you set the dip switches. So there's a set of dip switches in the outdoor unit that are marked SA1, and there's a set of dip switches on the indoor air handler that is marked SA1. So switch number 1 needs to be turned on both indoor and outdoor of the SA1 dip switch. Then you don't have to hook up the H1 and H2. It will work with the 24-volt thermostat. But as Daniel said in the video, you're better off to leave those dip switches off, hook up H1 and H2 between the outdoor units. Even if you're not going to use the RS485 GREE controller, still hook up H1 and H2 between the indoor and the outdoor unit. Then you do not have to set them dip switches, and it will still work with 24 volt. Once the GREE service tool comes available for the FLEXX, that's going to be an advantage to you by having those hooked up. You'll be able to plug into the pigtail both on the indoor unit or the outdoor unit and read the data from both machines because they are communicating. The big advantage to making sure you go ahead and hook those wires up. If you use an 18.8 thermostat wire, you should have enough wires to be able to hook up the H1 and H2 and still have enough wires for your thermostat connection. So you should be able to just run one 18.8 cable from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit, 2 of those wires being your H1 and H2. So I know it works that way because I verified that, as Daniel said in the video, in Atlanta this week, just to make sure that is how it works. Okay. So,
so Justin, you had some input too?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's a great improvement versus the last version, having the RS485 communication capability and the full variable speed capability of the indoor fan with that RS485 communication. It's just going to better ensure even more comfort for the homeowner at the end of the day versus the prior versions that were stuck into one speed with the dip switches.
Right.
Well,
yeah. I was going to say better dehumidification, all that, being able to drop that fan speed also means that their system's inherently going to be running at a lower speed too. So, that's going to be able to give you a longer run time. It's going to give you, more humidity draw from the space. And which, I mean, if you don't know, especially in southeastern areas or any of the like more swampy areas, that kind of thing, many customers have found that they can be far more comfortable at a warmer temperature, just if they can have lower humidity. You don't end up with that cave effect, the walls dripping, that kind of thing,
So to elaborate a little bit more what you just said, James, and you as well, Justin, you brought up some good points there. The blower does become variable speed if you're using GREE's RS485 controller. You don't have to set the dip switches for the blower. It's going to recognize that it's connected to the controller, and you don't have to manually set them. Whether you hook up H1 and H2 between the indoor and outdoor or not, you set the dip switches and use either way. If you use a 24-volt thermostat, then you have to set the dip switches for your blower speed because you don't have the GREE's controller tagged into to make it variable speed. Okay. I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. If you're using 24 volt, you have to set your blower profile dip switches. You need to measure your static pressure and make sure you should be measuring static pressure whether you use a GREE controller or not. But you want to verify your airflow. Secondly, you have a couple different options with humidity, dehumidification, I should say. Okay. Just like the previous FLEXX, you still have an energy savings mode set of dip switches. They are SA1, 3, and 4. If you set that unit to energy savings mode, you're going to force longer run times, which is going to give you better dehumidification. Then on top of that, you have the DH terminal in there. So if your thermostat is capable of giving a 24-volt output for dehumidification mode, and we send 24 volts to the DH terminal on the air handler, it will slow the blower down and give you a better dehumidification mode. Okay. Keep in mind that I stress this in all heat pumps, air conditioners, so on and so forth. These are not dehumidifiers. If you have a real humidity problem, then you need to look into an ERV system or something like that to control that humidity. They are air conditioners. They can only remove the humidity so much. If you got a real humidity problem, you may need additional sources to be able to pull the humidity out. Okay.
All right.
So, any comments to what I just said? If I forget anything?
Yeah. Well, so I got a question on the dip switches as far as static pressure. This is not a pretend question. I actually don't know. So previous versions, we were setting the static pressure via dip switches on the indoor unit, so to give it a different profile, but depending on the ductwork that it was connected to. Are we saying that if we're using the GREE controller, we don't have to set the dip switches to set the blower profile?
Correct.
Okay, so how do you set the blower profile? Static pressure wise. Okay.
It's already set through the controller. It's going to make it variable speed. So now it's going to be similar to GMV, where it's looking at the inlet and outlet temperatures, and it's going to adjust the blower speed accordingly and give you a variable speed operation. Higher demand, warmer coil. We're going to drive the, colder coil. The colder the coil is getting, it's going to drive the fan speed up because you got more load, put it that way.
Right. So yeah, I guess I get like on the variable speed, but like on even on the GMV product with it being variable speed and the auto fan speed, you still have the static pressure setting. That's so
correct. And you don't have a static pressure setting on the GREE controller that I know of. I don't think there is. But what I do tell people is, it's just like, so when I was messing around with the one down at the lab, again, I don't have a fully ducted system down there. It's a lab setting, right?
Right.
So my suggestion is off mode, turn the fan all the way up on high speed with the controller.
Right.
And then measure your static. Make sure that air handler is not fighting high static. That sweet spot is 0.4 to 0.6 total static.
Right.
On any residential or light commercial system, these are low pressure static systems. They are not. There are commercial systems out there that are made and designed to run at 2 inches of supply static.
Right.
That is not these systems. These are low static units. The blowers are rated to 1 inch of static. But with that said, if you start out brand new, out of the box, get it all set up, clean filters, all the registers open, everything's all hooked up, and you're running at a 0.8, 0.9 static, you got no room for air. Filter starts getting dirty. Somebody closes the register. Now you're going to be up over that rating of 1 inch. Mm-hmm. That's why I inherently always say that sweet spot's 4 to 6, 0.4 to 0.6, so that I got room for air. Because the homeowner doesn't change the filter like they're supposed to. They're closing registers in rooms because I don't want to cool that because I don't use that room. And so on. There's all these reasons why static pressure goes up.
Right.
So give yourself a little bit of tolerance in there. If not, we need to relieve that ductwork static. And then also in design conditions, if you're going to put a 4-inch filter in there, make sure you got ductwork adequate to be able to give you the pressure drop across the filter and be able to still pull through it.
Right.
And it's just like I've always said about 1-inch pleated filters that they sell, and you go to Walmart and buy them. You can buy them at Target and whatever else. They have these real thick 1-inch filters. Well, God, the static pressure drop across that is enormous.
Right.
And most ducted systems are not designed for that. The return ductwork's not big enough to be able to accommodate that pressure drop across there. So now you end up running the coil too cold. And then when you have an inverter driven system like GREE has here, you are going to have that machine running in like what I like to call the protected mode.
Right.
It's going to try to protect itself from flooding back and, wiping out a compressor or anything like that.
Right, which is that's a good point, to remind folks too. Like what you would have on a traditional system is that the coil gets too cold, you might start getting ice forming on the coil, that kind of thing. You're going to get liquid pumping back at the compressor. It's going to overamp. It's going to drive the oil out of the compressor. It's going to reduce the life of that unit. In our case, what that looks like is it just doesn't ramp up like I want it to. Well, the reason why it's not going to ramp up like you want it to is because it's too cold, to prevent that ice from building up and the liquid flowing back and then the oil washing out and all that.
And the bottom line is it's going to end up on an air code, not with a failed compressor.
Right.
So it's not going to let you get away with poor ductwork or over filtering it and all these other things, right?
Right. Exactly. So I mean, it's a good thing to know that there's going to be a problem and that that before there's actually like a permanent issue, right? I mean, I personally would rather have an air code than be swapping out a compressor. That's just my view. I mean, some people might want to do that for fun. I don't think it's very fun to be swapping them out, but especially when you're doing it under warranty, that's not great, right? It's not great. It's not good for anybody. But
I just did a training not very long ago, and they asked me in the training, and like, how do you feel about using, different types of fittings, rather than, still doing the flare. I don't want them cutting off flares off our units, but, like tying a line set together and stuff like that. And I'm like, look, guys, if you want to use press fit fittings, use them. If they leak, how are we going to know? And the unit's going to protect itself. You're going to be the one out there fixing the leaks all the time, not us, right? So so they liked my approach. I was like, look, if you want to use those fittings and you lose your refrigerant, more than likely the GREE unit's going to protect itself. The only thing you're doing is you're going out there and fixing leaks for free, and recharging the system. So, be careful in what you're using and make sure it's a good product before you're using it, is what I tell people. So I'm not going to sit here and tell people how they can run their piping and stuff like that.
Right.
But the factory connections at the indoor and outdoor unit are the factory connections, and that's what we expect you to be using.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, those factory connections, I mean, for most of our products with the flare connections and all that, the entire purpose of that flare connection is to try to have a clean system, is to try to ensure that there's a clean system. That's the entire purpose. And the fact is, if you're a business owner, you got a lot of folks, you got a lot of guys out there working and stuff. You can't guarantee that everybody's going to do everything like they're supposed to on every job. So if there's a risk, if you think there's a risk of like guys not using nitrogen while they braze, and reducing the life of the equipment, maybe those press fittings are a good, idea to be able to use those, so that you can ensure there's going to be a clean system. I mean, it's easy enough to keep dirt out of a system and all that, you just keep the caps on the line set, but to try to ensure that somebody's not going to make a repair or go back and try to fix it or something like that, and then fill the system up with a bunch of black stuff, right? The cupric oxide, or carbon, as a lot of people call it. This can also ensure that you have a clean system. And like you're saying, if those aftermarket fittings, if they leak, stuff like that, you got problems with them and all that, I would just implore you to make sure that the directions are being followed, just like anything else. Because I know that, when somebody cuts it, if you cut a line set with a Sawzall or something, you're trying to do something like that, it's not going to work either way, right? It's not going to work if it's a flare, or it's probably not going to work right if it's even a braze connection, if you're cutting it with a Sawzall or whatever, or a reciprocating saw. But yeah, just make sure the directions are being followed on those kinds of things. I mean, nobody sets out to make something wrong. Nobody does. Nobody tries to manufacture something that doesn't work right. So that's something to keep in mind. But
so
any questions?
We do have some come in here. So let's get after some of these questions. Joseph with PC Refrigeration, he said, to clarify, when the GREE controller and 24 volt is connected at the same time, which ambient temperature will it use, GREE controller or 24 volt? So I think that's a misunderstanding. He's not quite understanding what I'm saying is, you're going to either use the RS485 GREE controller or you're going to use a 24 volt thermostat. You're not going to use both. But if you're using a 24 volt thermostat, you still hook up the H1, H2 wires between the indoor unit and the outdoor unit, so that machine can talk, the condenser and the air handler can still see information between the two units. right?
Right.
Let's
They were
be
saying
real.
we got three options there, right? You got a completely non-communicating system with a 24-volt
Thermostat where you'd set the dip switches.
Right. You've got a communicating system with a 24-volt thermostat, and then
Correct.
you've got a fully communicating system with the GREE wired controller. So there's
That's
three
it.
different options there, three different setups there.
Couldn't have said it better. That was perfect, James. But keep in mind, if you don't hook up that H1 and H2, even if you're using 24 volt, if you later on down the road, when we have these, they're coming soon, the FLEXX service tool, you plug into it, you're not going to see both units. You're only going to see outdoor information if you're plugged in there, or indoor unit information if you're plugged in there. If you are connected, you will see both.
Right. Well, so in that way, you know, I mean, some of the challenges that communicating systems have had in the past is like retrofit applications where you can't run an extra wire, or extra set of 2 wires or something like that. You're having to use everything that's existing. This is still a product that you can use.
Correct.
You're not having to go pull an extra wire or whatever, pull it through a chase or whatever. You can still use this product just like you would anything else. And it still gives you a better option than what most traditional systems would give you. This would give you the option just like our previous FLEXX, which has been, honestly, it's been massively popular as far as an application. But then if you do have the wires or whatever, but you want the user interface like from your favorite thermostat, right? I know which one it's not your favorite thermostat. I'm not going to name it right now, but like if the customer wants a particular user interface or tie in with whatever kind of systems they got on their house or whatever, you can give them that option and also be a communicating system, give you that full modulation that you were wanting out of a, like maybe even a more expensive system than what the GREE FLEXX is, right? And then finally, if you're wanting full absolute modulation and all that, and the GREE controller is a good fit for your application, then you've got that option as well. So it's a very versatile piece of equipment, which is another reason why it's called the FLEXX, right?
And that's where it comes into play with those other dip switches I was talking about, like energy savings mode, stuff like that.
Right.
Once you tie in that RS485 GREE controller, you don't need to set any of that anymore. It's already communicating. It's about as smart as it's going to get at that point, right?
Yeah, with the GREE controller, right. So, it can make the adjustments and all that, and, and honestly makes it, somewhat similar to like the Multi-Pro. If you're using the Multi-Pro as a one-to-one, like in that regard, fully communicating system, very fancy, takes care of everything pretty much by itself. Definitely. Any other questions?
So I got 2 questions. There's couple more questions coming up, but I'm going to combine 2 of them together.
Okay.
Troy from Tom Barrow, just
Hi,
to clarify, H1, H2 works with 18 gauge solid stat wire. Jay Roberts, Central Supply Company, with new communication FLEXX unit, are we still using 18 solid core wire? In other words, regular thermostat 18 gauge wire. The answer to both of those questions is yes. It will use solid core 18 gauge wire. You don't have to have a stranded communication wire like we use for GMV with the CAN bus.
Right. Okay. No, good questions, and thank you, Jay and Troy. Appreciate you going easy on us. What's the next one?
Question is for Justin, because I don't know the answer. Arif Hussein, I hope I said that right, and if I said your name wrong, I apologize. With Gun and Peglow, he says, can you elaborate a little bit on how the taxes will be applied on the FLEXX R32 units?
Well, depends on what taxes you're talking about. Sales tax, anytime money changes hands, the government's going to want a piece, right? But what I think they're talking about is Section 25C of the Inflation Reduction Act. Basically, that was a home energy tax credit for qualifying systems. In, December of last year, the IRS changed their rules and stated that any manufacturer trying to go for that tax credit for their products had to register as a qualified manufacturer. And in doing so, you get set up in a portal, and then each of your qualifying products will be issued a 4-digit PIN number, which then has to be put on the a tag of some sort on the unit. Well, since January, we've been working with the GREE factory to get that accomplished. Unfortunately, it's nothing we can do stateside. The factory itself has to register with the IRS. It's been quite the process. We finally made some headway with that. We now have direct contact with the IRS, which it was pretty amazing that their customer service was very good. We weren't expecting that, so thank you to the agent who's helping us out. They're in direct contact with GREE now. GREE has a full list of things that they have to do because they were getting an error code when going in and trying to register, and it's been a massive headache. But now they're directly connected with the IRS, and we're hoping by the end of the month we'll have the qualified manufacturer process out of the way. And then after that, we'll be able to get those 4-digit PIN numbers for the products. That way, hopefully on those products, the end user, the homeowner, can then apply for the homeowner tax credit for those home energy improvements. I can't say exactly how much or how, so on and so forth. I'm not a tax expert. They obviously need to talk to their accountant about that whole process. Now, with all that being said, in the latest legislation that we've seen, the big beautiful bill, as our president and everybody's calling it, there, at least the last draft that I saw, there is a line in there eliminating these tax credits. So the 25C, the IRA, all that, it looks like, based upon what our legal counsel at KPMG told us, that bill passes as is, those tax credits go away. So this may be the last year for those, but not sure. I don't think it's fully passed yet. It might be in the House or Senate. I forget which. But yeah, as long story short, as of right now, we currently don't qualify for that 25C tax credit.
All right. But to be clear, on that tax credit, that's not the Northeast Energy Partners tax credits. That's not like local or utility based tax credits. That is only the federal rebate. And
right. It is the 25C is a federal tax credit, not a rebate. It's a tax credit.
Oh yeah, tax credit, right.
But you still have local state utility rebates, like through NEEP. Massachusetts has Mass Save, Maine has Efficiency Maine. All of these, excuse me, are state programs, either run through the state government itself or through local utilities. And those programs have their own sets of qualifications.
Right. So
that would have nothing to do with the qualified manufacturer, unless they just went and placed that qualification in their stipulations. But as of right now, for most of those local utility or state programs, products are going to qualify. So just go to whatever local program you're trying to qualify for, look at their qualifying products. They should have a QPL or qualifying product list, like I said, through NEEP or whoever, and you should see our products in there.
Right. And often those are rebates, and they are often higher dollar amounts than the tax credit that was being offered through the IRA, which may be one of the reasons why they're, exploring getting rid of it in the first place. But we're not tax professionals, like Justin said. We are absolutely not tax professionals. Now, we have become far more familiar with it, not because we want to, but we do get a lot of questions about it. And one of the things I can say from last year and many conversations that we have with the distributors and salespeople throughout and all that is, even if for tax credits, even if the product itself or the energy upgrade that you're doing, like spray foam or solar panels or whatever, even if they qualify, the products themselves qualify, or the process or whatever you had done qualifies, it's also the individual that also must qualify, which can be based on income level and just all kinds of other things too. So, it doesn't mean that, and as I think a lot of manufacturers also found out, it doesn't mean that, hey, everybody qualifies, you're getting like a check for it. That's not really how it works. It's a tax credit just like any other tax credit, right? It can help reduce your tax burden. It can, but it doesn't necessarily mean that nobody's writing you a check. And, it's not going to come in the mail and say, hey, here you go, pay to the order of James McIntyre. Here's a check. It's not really how that works. So, it's, I wish it was simpler, but it is what it is. That's the way it goes. But no, good points. Any other questions or anything that came in on that? I think we're
No other questions, but I will say in regards to what we were just talking about there, as far as tax credits go, if you guys are doing competitive bids out there, tech guy in me is going to tell the salespeople what I suggest is make sure that they're competitive bids, because it's a good possibility that you may be bidding against somebody that is able to get the tax credit, but the unit, the system is far and superior to this FLEXX unit, or even possibly a GMB unit, and that they may actually save more money in their utilities than they would ever get off of that tax credit. So don't just look at the fact that you ain't getting the tax credit and the other system is. You got to compare apples to apples.
Right, which is actually, one of the things that excited us was the push in certain regions for swapping from just heat pumps to cold climate heat pumps, because I think people were quickly finding that if they just used a plain heat pump in a cold environment, they effectively took whatever rebate they got and slowly but surely gave that back to the people that provided them with the rebate in the first place, via their power bill, so that's definitely something to bring up. And but yeah, I think the easiest answer for pretty much anybody would be, hey, you need to contact your tax professional to make sure that not only does the product qualify, but also that you qualify for that,
And I also found it quite interesting that there's a whole lot of manufacturers now out there now. They're all of a sudden coming out with ultra heating inverter driven units that GREE's been doing now for what, 10 years? Roughly to it. That our competition didn't have. So, I can't say that for sure, but I don't believe that a lot of these other manufacturers that are coming up with ultra heating technology didn't have it before.
Right. So we are getting some reports that the stream may have gone offline. So see if we could just check into that. Okay, it looks like we're sending out data, so it should be okay right now. The studio still has internet service, otherwise we wouldn't be able to talk to them. So we'll see if it clears up or whatever. All right, so I think now would be a good time to go ahead and move on to our misnometer. And let's see what this misnometer says today. All right, if the customer doesn't want a high wall, they don't want a mini split. Okay, all right. So firstly, we offer many different styles of units, like we just talked about the FLEXX for the longest time right now. But it's in regards to our mini split products, we offer ceiling cassettes, floor consoles, slim ducted units, many different styles of units, right? And we've seen where a lot of our units, have been used to eliminate some of those issues, those hot and cold spots, that kind of thing. But yeah, there are definitely still some systems out there. Let's see the graphics that are pulled up right now. Yeah, this is a pretty good example as far as the units or the indoor unit styles that we offer. We've got some updates and stuff, but we've seen some of those problems, like master bedroom, for example, or the main bedroom of the house, maybe that's a hot or cold spot, but somebody doesn't want a wall mount unit. We've seen tons of applications where people have used the slim duct style unit with our small outdoor unit, to eliminate that issue, and as Greg has attested to many times in the past, if you don't have a separate zone for your main bedroom where you sleep, you are missing out.
I think Jesus can comment on that too, because I believe he just recently did the same thing, didn't you, Jesus?
Yeah, no, that's true. I got an air handler in the attic, and yep, if you've never had individual control for your main bedroom, you're definitely missing out. So it's definitely something we want to check out.
Yeah, so if you like to sleep and it's frosty cold or whatever, guess what? It doesn't have to be frosty cold in the refrigerator, where the refrigerator is, right?
Right,
You don't have to pay for the whole house. What was that?
when you're thinking about it, it's a zoning, so you don't have to cool down your whole house to bring down your main bedroom, right? And
Right.
vice versa, if you want like the main common area to be conditioned, you just do that instead of the whole entire house. So
Right. You're right. And one of the things that we do very well is that we, zone by refrigerant, right? So even if you're using a multi-zone or a multi-pro, something like that, you're getting that full variable speed capability, or even if you're using a separate zone altogether, like if you're doing just a separate little mini split with a ducted unit, um, you are getting that zoning that you're wanting like that, and it's actually going to save you money. It's not just, reducing the capacity of the unit, even though it's producing the capacity, because that's what zone damper systems do, right? It's just reducing the airflow, but you're still, that compressor's out there still running like a 5-ton unit because that's what it's running like. It has no choice, right? So this can not only provide better comfort, but it can save you money on your power bill as well. If you don't have to keep the whole house at 68 degrees, but you like your bedroom at 68, you're going to save money, right?
And I've done that in multiple applications where I was effectively only air conditioning my bedroom and had the rest of the house wide open because the controllers were set so high, they weren't even running. It's just the only thing that was cooling was my bedroom.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay. Yeah, no, it's I mean, I like that as well. I mean, I've shared that, the story on my end many times. We had a baby, and then the for whatever reason the room that the baby sleeps in needs to be like, 85 degrees or whatever all the time. You know how that goes. I don't make the rules. I just follow them. But but having those separate zones like that means that I didn't have to have the entire house that way. I didn't have to have all of it that way. And and that's with the multi-pro system I got on my house. Last but not least, on something like that, we all have the tendency to make assumptions on what the customer is going to want, right? But I would caution you to never make the decision for your customer. After seeing a wall mount, that kind of thing, maybe giving them some examples, showing some pictures or whatever, an installation, or sharing just like we've used like a TV, or a refrigerator or a dishwasher or something like that. We've used those examples in the past, and those are, utilitarian style products, right? And every homeowner in the world has become accustomed to, having to see those unless they're hiding them inside cabinets or something like that. Um, having a 70-inch TV on the wall, if you're not watching it, it's a big black box on the wall. You're not likely to be able to move it wherever you want to either. So, like once those products are in place, even with a wall mount, once they're in place and taking a look at the price of it, that kind of thing, let that homeowner make an informed decision. You might be surprised what someone's willing to accept if they're talking about saving money or better comfort or something like that. Um, just
and
a
I
word of
think
advice.
just to kind of elaborate more where you're going there with it, James, too. I think everything should be shared with the customer when they're trying to make a decision, because a customer that is going to be, say, switching from or having a traditional ducted system for the entire house is going to more of the multi-zone mini split or a GMV unit or whatever else. And now we have options where you could use a wall mount, a cassette, a ducted unit, and so on. And you're trying to help that homeowner or business owner in like commercial decide which product's best for them. You need to share everything. In other words, what I mean by that is, okay, it seems like that the big pushback is always, no, I don't want a wall mount. But I think what's not shared with them is the fact that the wall mounts that they're in that room are the easiest to be accessed and serviced over a ducted unit in an attic, a cassette that's shoved up into the attic and stuff like that. You got to be fair with them, make sure they understand, or even the floor ceiling unit. That's going to be more easy to service than a ducted unit. The wall mount's going to be more easy to service than a ducted unit. Same with the cassette, right? So just make sure they can get an informed decision is all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to talk one side or the other. I'm just trying to say, they're immediately going to say, no, I don't want a wall mount. But then they might change their mind when you say, okay, 5 years from now, when the unit starts getting dirty and stuff like that, because all systems get dirty. That's HVAC. Dirt is our number one enemy in this business. It always has been. Which one's going to be easier to go in there and do the maintenance and clean and take care of? It's definitely going to be the wall mount or the floor ceiling unit versus a ducted unit or a cassette. Now we do have some really nice filters that we offer for the ducted units now, which will help mitigate some of that.
Right.
But no filter's perfect either.
Right. Well, if it's perfect, then you're not getting airflow, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good transition, Greg.
Give them a good informed decision is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah. Well, that actually leads right into our stay heated and chill out segment.
I planned that.
Is, say what?
I said I planned that. No, not really.
Yeah. But it's avoiding heat hazards in attics. And this is something that, I've had a lot of experience with. Grew up in Alabama and live in Texas. So I would love to stay out of attics as much as possible. Fortunately for me, I don't have to go in them every day, but many of the people watching this are having to do this all the time. So yes, of course, we don't want to make the decision for our customer, but hey, at the same time, maybe you don't want to have to go into an attic nearly as much. Well, so one of the things that I've got, this is whether or not James needs to stay heated or chill out, is that attics are hot. And even when it's not, they're still hot, right? And, that could be a dangerous thing, right? So I say, well, I guess I say chill out in this regard, as far as staying out of attic. And that people should be installing mini splits to stay out of the attic. So a little bit backwards than the way we normally do this. If you want to vote on this, go ahead and comment using the question mark icon to the right of the screen. You can go with chill out if you think that people should be installing mini splits so they can stay out of the attic, right? I can tell you this much. We've got a video coming up on this in a little bit. Cleaning the blower wheel, cleaning the filter, cleaning an evaporator coil, that kind of thing. I would much rather do that out of the attic, and going up in an attic, crawling all the way across it, not having the code required access, not having the flooring down in an attic, in order to get over there to it, or the customer decided they wanted 36 inches worth of insulation all of a sudden blown in, and it's all blown around that, and you're going to clean that evaporator coil. The best way to clean that evaporator coil is what? Pull it out of the attic. So you got to drag, you got to cut it out after pumping it down. You got to cut it out. You got to drag it all the way outside. You got to wash it. You got to clean it and all that. Then you got to go put it all back in order for it to be clean. Do you have to do that with a mini split? Absolutely not. I'll show you exactly how. Greg will show you on a video coming up soon. So what do you think, Justin? You think I should chill out and use mini splits, or stay heated and just keep on working in attics from now on?
No, I absolutely believe you should chill out, get out of the attic, start using mini splits, ductless mini splits to be specific. Like most of us on this call, I got started out doing installations. I've been in many attics, 106 degrees outside. It's usually 140 or so in the attic. Just sweating, insulation sticking to you, getting all itchy. And it's usually very tight, working in some older homes. And it's absolutely miserable trying to run the ductwork and all that when it's so hot outside. I think, a lot of people, especially in this industry, when people are complaining about, nobody wants to work, nobody wants to come in the industry. Well, wouldn't it be great if you could tell your employees, hey, we don't have to go up in the attic today. We're going to be down below installing a ductless mini split. They're going to love that a lot more than having to climb up into, up to that attic access and get all hot and sweaty.
Right. So Justin says, chill out, right? So Greg, what about you?
Oh, well, definitely chill out. I mean, there's only one advantage, in my opinion, to doing all that work in the attic. And I was a whole lot skinnier back then.
The sauna.
Gotcha. So back when your ribs were showing, you had more of a heat sink on the side, right? Because
That's
had more
exactly it.
Service area. Yeah, I understand exactly. I can tell you that my love handles stay about 140 degrees for like a good hour after I get out of it. How about Jesus?
I think I'm gonna have to be the oddball, guys. Not saying that I ever loved working in the attic, but sometimes it just that's the only way to do it. And I mean that's where like the multi-pro comes in handy, where you can actually still zone out and get away from um having to run mini splits at each individual zone, right? Because everyone thinks it's cost because you're having to do individual zones per mini split, right? When we look at it that way. But like I said, I would have to say stay heated just because, as much as ductwork that I've touched and as much clothes that I've ruined, it's still, and a realistic thing that's gonna stay and it's here probably for the rest of my career, honestly. So I'm gonna have to go stay heated.
All right. Well, that's fine. All right.
James, the only
I'm
reason
gonna,
why he
I'm gonna write
said
that down, Jesus. All
James,
right, Jesus.
the only reason why he said stay heated is because his wife wouldn't let him put a wall mount in the bedroom.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Well, I mean, I get it, man. Maybe she's watching. You got to say what you got to say. All right.
Well,
So
that's the
again,
great thing about GREE, though. We have products to fit every application, whether it's ducted,
Exactly.
There you go.
whatever. We've got the product to suit your needs.
right. Well, and to that point, we could also do a couple ductless zones and also still do the rest of that too. So, I mean, you go, hey, I'm going to come back in the winter and do your air handler.
Yep.
I'll do that during the winter. You kind of pick where you want to work when you want to work it.
Well, if you're doing multi-zone, just leave an extra circuit and run an extra set of refrigerant lines up there. That way you can just go up there, stick another unit on there, pull the one that's dirty out.
There you go. Yeah, I'll be back in the winter and just I'll be back next winter and put this one in. We'll just swap it out again. I mean I guess that's a business model. I don't know if it's a good one, but
That's why you use isolation valves and flare fittings, right?
there you go. Yeah.
You have a built-in spare.
Yeah, actually, the maintenance agreements and stuff overseas, they actually do quite a bit of that. Like for large apartment buildings and stuff, they swap out the units and that kind of thing. But probably not for individual homes. All right, well, so some safety tips on that working in an attic thing. I would like to start with one. It's a concept called acclimation, right? As you know, like when you're working in this in the season and all that kind of stuff, the first day that you have to go in the attic and it's warm, next day you go up there, it's a little bit hotter, next day you go up there, it's a little bit hotter, that kind of thing. Your body does have a tendency to acclimate to that. Who doesn't have the opportunity to acclimate to it is the guy you just hired. So if he was working at, I don't know, Walmart or something, where it's nice and cool inside, he's not going to have that same level of acclimation, right? He may also not have that experience working in that attic and, putting up with that amount of heat. And looks like we forgot there we go. Doesn't have the experience doing that, and that's a real thing. That's a real thing that people can suffer from heat exhaustion very quickly as compared to you. It's not a measure of their resiliency or anything like that, their perseverance or anything like that. I mean, that's absolutely just a bodily function you can't predict. Next on that list is hydrate like it's your job. Unfortunately, for the folks in the, from Houston to east of that, with that high humidity, your sweat, you can keep sweating, you can sweat all day. If it can't evaporate, it's not doing its job. You still got to be drinking water, right? But if you're like in Arizona, it's a matter of life or death, right? It's like that no matter what. You need to hydrate. Always hydrate, 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 right? I could tell you that going on rooftops and all that, I would start the day by buying a gallon, of water. And if I didn't have that gallon of water with me, I had to leave the roof to go get it because, 5 minutes can lead to 10 minutes, can lead to however long it is till somebody pulls you off of that roof or out of that attic, right?
Make sure it's water. Like I get it, Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola is good, but be drinking plenty of water. A nice cold Modelo Chelada doesn't count as hydration either. So drink water.
Well, that's for after work. But yeah, you're absolutely
some
right.
attics where you see the cans still left up there.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing the Texas into it. Modelo Chelada. Yeah, I've got some of those in the fridge. Yeah, well, so that's another good point. If you're slamming caffeine, like I have a tendency to do so, many others have the tendency to do that, you're going to need more water than what you may be accustomed to. You're going to sweat that. I mean, it's a diuretic, right? You're going to be ejecting that as fast as possible. So drink water, But make sure you get some electrolytes too if you're going to be sweating a lot. You know, you need sodium and potassium. There's a handful of other things. I'm not a medical professional, but there's other things that you need. You know, drink those things too. Next is dress smart. Wear lightweight, breathable clothing, right? If you're going to be on rooftops and stuff like that, you want to wear something that's going to protect you from the sun. You know, dress for the work that you're going to be doing. Maybe this is not for the most seasoned techs out there, but you know, heat exhaustion can affect anybody at any moment. It's like motion sickness. You have no idea when it's going to come. All you can do is take steps to prevent it. Okay.
Well, you know, realize, James, too, you know, just like you say, get acclimation's a lot of it. But as we grow older and the more we're out there working and stuff like that, you go through body changes and stuff in your
Right.
health and whatever. Your health may not be as good as it once was. And, you know, now that dehydration sets in faster on you. And you
Yeah.
didn't even realize it was happening to you.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Yeah.
medication can also affect that. There's a lot, you know, a late night out the night before absolutely affect that. I mean, that's a lesson that every young man seems to have to learn if they're going to be doing this, is that late night with those, that heavy drinking, that kind of thing has a tendency to kind of thin that blood out and your body's still trying to get rid of it when you show up. Hopefully you're not drunk at work. I'm just saying, but, but you know, having that dehydration, having that starting the day out dehydrated, you know, make sure you're hydrated before you even get up there, before you even start working. Like I
when
say,
you're out,
I mean,
when you're
it's
out,
up. Yeah. Go
but
ahead.
I was just gonna say, when you're out in this trade and working in the heat, even just outside in the heat and humidity and stuff that you guys deal with, is the same as I did when I was in the field and getting into attics and stuff like that. I think the other recommendation I have to give is, you know, make sure you're going to that once a year checkup with your doctor and make sure you are as healthy as you can possibly be when you're out there in that type of weather. Because, you know, like I said, if your body is being stressed and you don't realize it, it's going to be worse when you're out in that heat.
Yeah. I can also say that, evidently, you know, if you ever have had a heat stroke or something like that, like you've suffered some kind of heat injury, your body will now have a tendency to, um, you know, your chances of suffering from that again go up significantly.
Right.
You know, I've known quite a few people that came out of the field to work tech support and stuff because of, you know, basically an annual heat stroke that they would end up having, you know, that kind of thing. And it gets to the point where they can no longer do that. And, you know, but anyway, you know, I say all that, and I know that everybody, you know, people have a tendency to think that safety is kind of boring and all the rest of that. But I mean, I would rather you guys just keep doing this stuff safely every day, you know, than to hear that, you know, somebody got hurt, you know. But so anyway, you can vote, stay heated if you want to stay up in the attic, or type chill out if you want your next install to be a mini split. We're 4 out of 5 here on chill out. We'll see if it gets outnumbered, but let's take a look, see if we got any questions that have come in. Do you have any questions, Greg?
There's no new questions come in.
No new questions. Got it. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. It is about our GREE Contractor Assistant app. Many of you have gone to greepros.com. That's GREEPROS.com from your smartphone and followed the instructions to create a shortcut on your home screen. As a matter of fact, thousands of you have done this already. To align better with the GREE Pros name, we are now referring to it as the Contractor Pro Troubleshooting app. So for some of the updates that we've got to it, if you search for error code, one result will link to an error code troubleshooting tool from greecomfort.com. So it's the same troubleshooting tool that you've used in the past, but this is coming from our greepros.com app. If you search for documentation, one result will be a link to the system documentation page on greecomfort.com. This just makes it a heck of a lot easier to get to those to the information that you need in the field. Also, you know, when you scan the QR code, it will take you there. So the QR code is on every piece of equipment that we sell. Scan the QR code, it takes you right there and gets you the information that you need as quickly as possible. All right, now so switching gears, let's give a shout out to that comment, to a comment that we had on our YouTube channel at GREE Comfort. Let's see, on the YouTube comments, the title of the video was how to test temperature sensors. From one user, he said, GREE error code F5, what is the problem? We appreciate the detailed question. So let's do a little bit of a demonstration here using our GREE Pros GREE Pro's Contractor Pro troubleshooting app. Excuse me. All right. So we would open our phone. We would open up the link that we have saved on our home screen by following those directions that are available at greepros.com. It says, what do you want to do? You'll select what do you want to do, and it's going to be troubleshooting error codes, or you can simply search for the error code that you're looking for. And in this case, you can type in the error code in our troubleshooting tool. In this case, it's an F5, so we type that in. And then we've got step by step, evaluate the installation. Don't overlook the obvious, that kind of thing. But what the error code means itself is that you've got a discharge temperature sensor error code. I will tell you, just a personal note here, well over 9 times out of 10, if you've got a sensor error code, it's going to be that the sensor is open or short. But we give you the method for being able to test that, being able to ohm out that sensor to ensure that it is open or short. If it is open or short, what do you do, Greg?
You got to replace it.
You got to replace it. That's it, right?
So,
and like I said, what was that?
And to follow up with what you're saying there, so you can't get an error code for a sensor that's out of range,
right?
Because it has to get out of the range to be able to give you the error code, which would be shorted or open.
Right.
That's why you get the error code.
It's not going to be that it reads 180 degrees.
Doesn't mean you can't have a sensor that's out of range causing other operational issues.
Right.
So when in doubt, check it out. I mean, that's kind of, I've been with that model for years. It doesn't take that long. And we've talked about this in many trainings that we did. If you get accustomed to being able to do quick ohm checks to thermistors, you quickly can run through these thermistors on any GREE unit out there and know whether they're out of range or not. Or roughly, just does anything really stick out at you? So what I kind of refer to that is if you have our ohm chart, which you can get to on our website as well. If you know roughly what the temperature is, it's a quick stab with your meter to get the resistance reading to know whether that thermistor is even remotely where it's supposed to be.
Right.
And then I'm not going to start into a whole nother segment, but that's why we started promoting the service tools a lot more too, because that is another way to do it as well. If you hook up the single zone service tool to any one of our mini splits, you can plug that up and it's going to give you your temperature readings, and you can just verify by, whether or not the temperatures are accurate.
Right. Right.
Just
you can also,
you can do that about anything.
Yeah, you can do that during your spring or fall, preseason call.
Absolutely.
You can take a look and see if there's sensors that are going out of range, things that aren't reading correctly, and go ahead and prevent that issue from finally showing up during the hottest or coldest time of the year.
I don't want it to come out wrong, though. It's not like we have an overwhelming issue with the misters, because we really don't.
We really don't.
Failure rate is very low.
Right.
But it does happen. They're machines and they're thermistors, and thermistors can fail. So it does happen. It's just, but it isn't like we got an overwhelming problem with them.
Right. And from a general information standpoint, I mean, they're thermistors. Many different types of systems out there use thermistors. If you're working on somebody else's brand of equipment, they've got, hopefully they've got thermistor charts available to you. If you're having a hard time finding that information for that, sell that homeowner a GREE next time. And you'll be able to find the information a lot faster, like we just showed. The next YouTube comment was about deep clean a mini split easily without removal. Okay, so like not having to pull the evaporator coil off the wall or pulling the blower wheel out, right? From Joe C5282, it says, perfect video. Where can I buy the cover cleaning kit, and what size is the pressure washer? So, I mean, I can tell you as far as the cover cleaning kit and the pressure washer itself, both were, purchased on your favorite online retailer, right?
That everybody buys, just about everybody buys from.
Yeah. I get boxes from that online retailer all the time.
You can even just Google it. I mean, there's so many companies out there that are offering those jackets that go around that unit like that. Just make sure I found out in my own research of it, they had a large and a small, or large. I think it was large and extra large, or large and a small. I can't remember which one, but it tells you what size heads they'll fit.
Right.
So you need to be paying attention to that, because the one in that video was a 2-ton unit. So I needed the larger of the two to be able to fit around that unit. And then the pressure washer, just make sure it's low pressure. It's not going to be, you don't want to be using like you'd use your power washer for your driveway.
Right.
This just pumped out of a 5-gallon bucket. It was just a low pressure washer, is all it is.
Right.
There's all different kinds of makes and models out there. A friend of mine just did one. He actually cleaned it for another friend of mine, but long story short, the one that he had was all self-contained, held 3 gallons of water, and it ran off of a 12-volt battery.
Right.
And it was rechargeable. So that was pretty cool too. So
one I use, the kit was very inexpensive. The washer itself was also very inexpensive. This one used a, well, in this case it was a DeWalt battery, but they've got ones that run off of, Milwaukee or Ryobi or whatever. I mean, there are many inexpensive options out there, for something like this. And, if you've got a fair amount of mini splits that you've installed, and maybe you haven't done a PM on them or anything like that, it's definitely an easy option. You don't have to try to pull the blower wheel out in order to clean it. That kit is also available, like the washing kits and stuff. I believe, third-party retailers such as Rectorseal is one that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yep.
So your supply house may also offer those kits. I've used those kits in the past. They're perfectly fine kits. Some of them have hard plastic plates on the sides that hold them in better, and there's a bunch of different options out there. But
that one did in that
Yeah.
video. It did have the hard plastic plates on the side of it and stuff. So
Right.
I mean, just commenting to the one I used in that video.
Right. So
I was amazed at how easy that really is. There's nothing to it.
Right, and blowing out the blower wheel is, I mean, it's quick. It goes by really, really quick. I mean, it takes longer to put the kit on than it does to clean it. So,
Right.
but that it makes it clean as a whistle. It's the next best thing to taking it off the wall and taking it outside and completely disassembling the unit and all that kind of stuff. And it sure as heck beats trying to figure out how to get the blower wheel out of it. I mean, we eliminate the need for, pulling that blower wheel out. You can clean it in place. I can't say that you have the same option on traditional equipment.
The other thing I will say
Right.
about that too is, the questions come up to me before. Well, if you were going to do a deep clean wash of that, how often would you recommend doing it? So on and so forth. I can't really answer that question for you, because the environment doesn't matter how clean people keep the house. It's the environment they live in is going to dictate how often that needs to happen.
Right.
Some houses you may have be in a very dirty environment, and it needs a deep clean like that once a year.
Right.
But
And sometimes that environment has nothing to do with the house. It could just be where you live.
Right.
I know when it gets dry and dusty out here, I know that Justin and Jesus both can attest to this. When it gets dry and dusty out here, you're getting a film of dirt all the time, no matter what. It's just that no matter how much you clean, and honestly, how much you clean can also, stir up the dust and all that while you're cleaning and all the rest of that. It gets caught by that unit, and it's going to go right into that unit. And we've talked about it before, but like candles and diffusers and all that stuff can also contribute to the filth or whatever that ends up building up on these units. But the fact is, I mean, I think it's more noticeable because it can be on somebody's wall, and they can walk over and feel it, that kind of thing. But that does mean it does end up getting cleaned more often. Not like your ductwork or the blower wheel that's in the attic. How often does that get cleaned, right?
Right.
So
the biggest thing I can say to mini splits and your inspection piece, and I showed it in that video, is looking at that blower wheel. When that blower wheel starts getting some buildup in, that's when it's time. Now it's because you're losing efficiency. Whether it's keeping the unit from working right or not doesn't matter. You started getting dirt buildup on that blower wheel, decent amount. Now it's time. And
right, like on your
if that's after 3 years,
right.
Then you can tell the homeowner, say, hey, or the business owner, say, it looks to me like this would be best that we go ahead and start doing this every 3 years. Or
right. And like we said about the airflow thing before about the FLEXX, it's no different for these units too. you know, what you're accustomed to. Is it dirty? Well, it's frozen up like a solid block of ice. Of course it's dirty. In this case, you know, Greg's 2 ton. If it gets dirty, it's no longer 2 ton. It's a 2.5, you know, it's a ton and a half,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that's something
Exactly.
that's something you end up noticing like the dead of summer or the dead of winter, that kind of thing. But
Well,
like
yeah,
with a,
you're not going to know about it when you don't need it.
exactly, right. Yeah, it wasn't broken. I mean, it lasted all spring, no big deal, right? We've heard that a
Yep.
thousand times, right? Um, Next one is a comment on the product update 2025. Big changes to GREE ductless and FLEXX products from a user called not Ian85CA. I'm going to think this person's probably Ian. Um, I have a 2022 GREE FLEXX air handler. I remember there was a comfort upgrade coming where the variable speed motor from the air handler could be utilized as variable speed based on sensor inputs. What's the status of this? We just covered that, but if you want to, you can get a quick, a quick summary of that, Justin.
Yeah, so I know for a couple of years we had talked about at high levels potentially making the FLEXX a fully variable speed product. And talked to the factory, there, some back and forth. So how it played out is, like we just did the product video from Daniel on the R32 FLEXX, we added an RS-45 connection. So now we can fully control that and have fully variable speed with the GREE controller. Now what that means is the older FLEXX models, the 24-volt control only R410A model, there will not be any kind of upgrade or anything like that to allow those to be fully variable speed. Because again, there's really no way we can really do it because it does not have a communication port. It doesn't have that RS-45. It's only 24 volt. So there's really no way we could go back and retrofit those to be variable speed. So unfortunately, on the older 410A models, we just can't do that.
Right. Gotcha. Oh, thank you for your input on that. Excuse me. Let's see. Next we got the Q&A. Do we have any questions or comments that have come through, Greg?
That's a great question. And no new questions.
No new questions.
That means we're doing a really good job.
I know. An absolutely perfect
We gotta
show.
quit doing so good, get these people involved.
Right. Explain things worse. I gotcha. All right. I always like to say that in a training class about, any questions and then nobody has them. I'm like, okay, well, it's perfect then, it's not for any other reason.
Right.
Oh, any other questions, comments, guys? Justin, Greg, Jesus?
No, I think we covered a good bit,
I think
I
we did
really
too.
think that the cleaning video, it just enlightens people into you can clean these units if you're careful about what you do. I made comments in that video that if I was going to be going into somebody's home, I would drop a piece of plastic drop cloth down the wall just to ensure that I'm not going to get anything wet. I would have a drop cloth on the floor. I'm going to check that pressure washer for connections and everything before I go in the home to make sure I'm not going to have some big foobard accident and make a mess in their house. That's what I'm saying. If you take your time enough to make sure you're not going to go in somebody's home and make a big mess, you
Right.
can absolutely clean these units inside the homes. And I would have to say that the floor ceiling mount unit is going to be another one that's relatively easy to get to and clean
Right.
versus, like you said, getting up to a ducted unit. Haven't really tore into how well that would play out with the cassette.
I
Maybe
have.
that's something with a pressure washer.
No, I didn't have the pressure washer at the time, but I definitely cleaned the coil, and it's a bit more involved. I mean, you do
I
have
would think so.
you got the control box, you got the plate, you got the drain pan to remove. There's quite a bit there. You do have to disassemble it, but you can get to it. And once you get to it, it's wide open. You can make sure it's as absolutely clean as possible. One thing I will say is having a ceiling cassette for the past 7 years, I've had to clean it once. And that's just, again, matter of the environment, matter where it is, the fact that it's in the ceiling, it's not down there next to the floor, that kind of thing. It's like the difference between having an air filter that's installed in the ceiling versus having a filter that's installed closer to the floor. I mean, you've seen where that gets dirtier close to the floor, or God forbid, in the floor. So I got one for you. What would be your favorite new feature for the FLEXX R32? And then we'll close it out.
Well, we got a couple more questions that popped in that I do.
Look at that. How about
but
that?
let's go ahead and get what Justin was going to say. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, personally, some of the changes we made to the physical product itself, as far as valve placement.
Yeah.
On the 2-3 ton, it's no longer up inside the unit, so you don't have to use the adapters anymore. It's on the outside of the unit where it's supposed to be. So I think the physical changes we made to the unit to make it more installer friendly, probably my favorite things, because it's going to make people happier when they're trying to go out and install the equipment.
Right. That's good. That's a good point. Yeah. I'll say that, I mean, I like the fact that, we can have a communicating system, but also have the 24-volt that, thermostat that people are insisting on wanting. As much as I love the GREE controllers, not everybody agrees with me. So, but I get it.
I think mine would have to be the fact that we went to a bluefin coated coil.
Yeah, that's definitely something to talk about there. Yeah,
and
it's
we got
not only the blue fin, right? It's the entire coil is coated now. Yeah, the U-bends and sheet metal, and
not that we had an overwhelming problem with leaky coils or anything, but any added protection is going to help, right?
Yeah.
I have to agree with Justin about moving the service valves outside the outdoor unit, getting rid of the service valves on the indoor unit. I think was a huge improvement, because them service valves, the way they were, it forced you to run the piping across the front of that coil, and I did never like that. So now they stick straight out. It's real easy to go right, left, up, down. It makes it a connection like you would on any other evaporator coil or air handler. So that and the dehumidification, having the ability to be able to hit it with dehumidification, slow the blower down for dehumidification with the 24-volt thermostat. You don't need that with the GREE controller because you got dry mode. So, no, definitely significant improvements to the FLEXX R32 unit. I think people are going to be pleased with it.
Right. Hey, Jesus, what about you, man?
Yeah, best for last, right? So, I actually got two things that really excited me whenever I saw it down in Miami. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but both the Eco and the Ultra, they both have electronic expansion valves, correct? Justin, Greg?
I know for sure on the FLEXX Ultra, I'm pretty sure the Eco does as well.
Right. And that just adds. Oh, go ahead, Justin.
Sorry, what I was going to say, because we now have the full variable RS-485 communication, they're going to want to control that. They're going to want to be able to dial in that EEV on the indoor unit, so they can really dial in superheat, subcooling, and all of that. Now, with 24-volt communication, it's going to kind of default to the algorithm on the board, right? It's going to just try to go to a range. But if you have the GREE controller hooked in, it's going to be able to really take advantage of all those steps in that EEV. But yes, that's why we have it. You're going to have much more precision control, whereas before we just had the TXV.
Right. That just adds to efficiency and then comfort levels of the homeowner, person that's inside the space. So that's one thing. And the other thing is they actually provided an adapter that way you could connect the service tool at either the outdoor unit and the indoor unit. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, the pigtail hanging off of it. So it's easy to get to and plug it up.
Right.
Yes, sir. I agree with both
excited about the new product.
And I've always said, and I've said this for years now, because I've been dealing with EEVs for a very long time, probably 14, 15 years. I will take an EEV over a TXV any day of the week. Much better metering device. Not that the TXVs are bad. The EEV is just that much better.
Right. You can't get really incremental control out of a TXV like you can on the EXV.
Correct.
All
right. We get after some of these questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do
this
that.
To you, James. What are we doing to improve multi-pro inventory levels?
Oh, well, yeah, so we've got an enormous amount on its way here. We are currently offloading some right now into our warehouse. So I know that we've had a little bit of an inventory delay that honestly only speaks to the amount that we have sold as of recently. I'll have to chalk up some of that demand to the fact that we talk about it on shows like this. So, yeah, so we yeah, it's there has been some delay on that. The tariff situation that we recently had as was pretty much the cause of that delay. Um, you know, it was
Well, let's
the
be
tariffs
honest,
were
that wasn't
incredibly
all of
high.
it.
So
But James, that wasn't all of it. GREE had a huge undertaking.
yeah, right,
They had a huge undertaking switching everything over from 410A to R32 for American product.
right,
The mini split line FLEXX and all that went first, and then multi-pros getting done still as we speak, right?
right.
So, and then along with tariffs, it's just, what everything could go wrong did go wrong for us.
Right. The timing
Scenario.
of all that, right? I mean,
But I have to believe that we're not the only ones that are struggling with inventory problems in this whole interim of switching from 410A to R32 or even R454B that some of the other manufacturers are using.
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
So
we definitely aren't. We aren't.
so just hang in there. We'll
Yeah.
get it back up, and once we get a full line of our R32 Multi Pro in there, we're also hopefully going to have some good improvements with that as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming. So
Yeah, yeah. One thing I will say about that is, the feedback that we've gotten from the field. I mean, I think that our FLEXX R32 is showing exactly that we absolutely do listen to the feedback from the field, like the valve placement and all that you were talking about, the communication, the variable speed blower, the coated coil, all of those things, those improvements, will be made or is being made, or excuse me, already have been made. It's just a matter of actually getting it here from China. It's a bit of a ways to get here. It's a bit of a trip, right? But the R32 equipment is on its way. It has been improved massively. I already think that it was an amazing piece of equipment, but like I said, we do listen to the improvements, and there were some improvements that we didn't even get asked for that we decided to go ahead and make on that. Especially user interface was a big one, how the controllers work and how they're, displays information, that kind of thing. So definitely some work there. And, but we should see, those delays and stuff like that stop very, very soon. But any other questions?
yes, sir. Liquid line filter dryer recommendations for R32 FLEXX. Yes or no?
Well, so on whether or not you could use a filter dryer, right? I believe that we have a document right now that that applied to the former or for the older model FLEXX. But our stance on that is that it is not required to be used. We do not recommend using those, right? I believe that's what the document says.
Correct. So the last document we put out is we basically said that the filter dryers are not required. But the simple fact of the matter is, we're using flared fittings. One, we're not brazing anything in typically. And if you do braze, you need to be flowing nitrogen and so on and so forth. So if you have to join a line set together because it's too long, et cetera, you should be having a clean line set. And just like most other inverter products, a filter dryer can act as a metering device if you get it clogged up, or it can fill in some of that desiccant inside there can get into the unit after so long, and that can plug up strainers, things like that. So what we do is we push best practices for installing your line set and doing your refrigerant piping the right way. We don't really push people to do a filter dryer because that's more of kind of a crutch and almost a liability at some point, because it's, you know, if you're following all of your best practices, you don't need it, right? And again, over in Asia, where all these inverter products are being installed, or even Europe, again, it's not required. It's something that took place here because we had all these legacy products where manufacturer warranties were getting real high because people were falling back best practices. They weren't pulling their line sets right. They weren't pulling a vacuum right. And you know, you leave a lot of moisture in the system, which turns to acid, so on and so forth.
Right.
You know, we push best practices and standards. We don't push crutches here. So that's kind of why we said it. It's not necessary. Plus, the units just already come with a lot of strainers in them. Now we know that's not going to do anything against acid or anything, but it will help prevent debris from getting in the system. So if you're adding a filter dryer and say it's not the best quality filter dryer, you go cheap on it, over time that desk can break up and get into the refrigerant and flow to those strainers and clog up the strainers. And you can't replace those strainers. It's very inaccessible. So, you know, just all in all, we don't require them, don't recommend them. That's kind of why, you know, Greg, if you want to add some color to that.
I agree with you 100%, because, you know, if you're doing, you know, running clean pipe and you are evacuating the system properly, you're flowing nitrogen if you're doing any brazing, making sure you're doing a good quality clean installation, then the filter dryer becomes a moot point at that point, right? They do make dryers that are filter material only, that has not exactly decadence. So if you're worrying about debris in the system not absorbing contaminants, then, you know, you could put just a filter in there, not a filter dryer. So
Right. Well, one of the things about those is that your typical off-the-shelf filter dryer has a mesh rating, right? It's a micron rating, right? It's basically what it can filter out. And the cupric oxide, you know, the black stuff that you get from brazing without nitrogen, is smaller than that mesh.
oh, it's gonna go right through it.
Yeah, it's going to go right through it. And in addition to that, we've got the strainers that are the same mesh rating as the typical filter dryer that you would buy off the shelf. So, and in that case, we may have as many as, you know, like more than 7 of those strainers in these systems. So adding an additional one, what does that really do? What does that really mean? The issue is that when I've got something that I feel like is like Justin said, a crutch, or like you will call it a safety net. You know, if you've got a safety net, you're liable to do more risky stuff if you've got a safety net, right? And so yeah, you absolutely end up with, you know, somebody, not you necessarily that are watching, but somebody out there might make the decision, oh well, it's got a filter dryer, so, you know, send it. You know, just get it over with, get it done. Oh, this will take care of whatever moisture I've got. You know, that kind of thing. And I don't know about you, I've seen filter dryers rolling around the back of people's trucks that are uncapped. The thing is about that desiccant material, it starts to be a desiccant material as soon as it is exposed to moisture at all. So if it is uncapped, rolling around in the back of the truck, that's the maximum amount of moisture it's going to absorb right out of the gate.
It starts absorbing moisture the minute you uncap it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, the thing I liken it to is you don't wear Band-Aids until you're cut, right? So you know, and stop cutting yourself, is, you know, stop doing that. You know, so in that case, we want to ensure that we got a clean, long-lasting system. You know, there's 30 years or more worth of inverter technology that's been out there, you know, with these products installed and all that, and the risk does not outweigh the reward, which there is none. So
I guess I need to clarify on my comment a little bit more about the filter, and the reason why I'm saying if you really want a filter on there without decadence, that's more in the lineup because you're reusing the line set.
Mhm.
You don't
Right.
have a brand new line set, and you're concerned about what might be in that line set. Well,
Right.
okay, you know, and there's a lot of people that recommend doing the RX11 flush and stuff like that. I'm not a big proponent of the RX11 flush, because if the flush is left in the line set, that could be more detrimental to the system than any debris that might have been. So, there's no good way to win there. I mean, the best way, if at all possible, replace the line set. So you got good clean refrigerant piping.
Right. I mean, you're putting in a brand new system, but the system component, it would be the line set. And if it's not brand new, then it's not really a brand new system.
Right. But I mean, we know there's always an exception to the rule. There are those applications, and I've run into personally where a new line set, unfortunately, it's not an option. Maybe not for a flex, but just the application in general, like say on an apartment building. When these things are built, they have these internal chases inside the building. And at that point on, good luck accessing it. And they're not going to let you run a line set on the outside of the building, so on and so forth. So you kind of have to reuse the line set in those situations. So yeah, you can go through, you can click, you don't know what the guy before you did, if they flow nitrogen or anything else. So you flush it and you try to get it as clean as you can. And you're concerned about it and you just don't know. So in those rare circumstances, and you're worried, you could install a filter dryer in that situation. Obviously, again, follow best practices, make sure it's as clean as possible, use a good high quality filter dryer that was stored properly, not roll around the back of your truck, and you can take that extra step to protect the system for those exceptions. But again, the rule is always follow best practices, use a new line set, so on and so forth. So don't take the exception and make that the rule.
Right. And I have to agree with what James was saying too. It doesn't negate the nitrogen flow, because the dryer isn't going to stop it anyway.
Yeah, right. And the fact is, it doesn't matter what kind of system it is. If you've got that black stuff flowing throughout, especially with like the high speed compressors that we've got now versus the reciprocating that they used to have, that kind of thing, you're going to cause what's called etching on the plates. You're going to be busting up stuff. You're going to be breaking stuff. That's what it's going to do. You're going to sandblast the inside of it, and that's what happens. It's absolutely what happens, and it reduces the life of it. I mean, like I always say, when I get my oil changed, I hope that they changed it with new oil.
Yeah, and again, it's not really there. Yes, if the debris isn't large enough to get caught by the fine mesh, it'll get caught. But again, we call it a filter dryer. Why do we call it a dryer? Because it's there to remove moisture, it's not there necessarily for all the debris and stuff. So if you're pulling a proper vacuum, following all your best practices, you shouldn't need a dryer in the system to begin with.
Right. So Troy Rudd, Tom Barrow just asked another question, but I believe we already answered. What is the stance on reusing existing piping with new unit with R32? Well, the stance, as far as I'm concerned, Justin, you can weigh in if you want, but we know there's inevitable situations that they're going to have to reuse that refrigerant piping. Again, we're back to what we've just been talking about. Best practices, make sure we're flowing nitrogen, make sure you clean the lines that you best possibly can. And if you're really concerned about it on those applications, those unique applications, then put a filter dryer on. So
for commercial applications, we prefer the use of a removable core filter dryer and the core to be removed at some point. How often do you change your filter? Well, there you go. Do you want that dirt just sitting in there for that long? Do you want that debris sitting there rubbing against that strainer that's in that filter dryer until it fails? I mean, because that's what happens.
Yep.
Anyway, any other questions, comments?
No, sir. That was it.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave on that note, unless we've got any other personal or any questions or comments from you guys.
I'm good.
Okay. I think we did. Yeah, I think we did. All right. Well, be sure to tune in to Talking Comfort Live, which is the first Wednesday of every month. Our next episode will be July 9th. Tune in. Yep. So it'll be, I'm sorry. It's, yep. So it'll be on July 9th, right? Yep. Okay.
Second Wednesday of the month due to the July 4th holiday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, second Wednesday of the month due to the July 4th holiday. Right. All right. So, um, be sure to try out the GREE, the GREE Contractor Pro troubleshooting app, and let us know what you think. Seems like a whole lot of people already have, which is really good news. And then when's the next Tech 90?
There's no more trainings planned until fall. I'm working
That's
on
right. Right.
schedule
Okay.
now.
All right. So yeah, I planned that question. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. And as always, thank you for submitting your questions and comments. It always makes this far more rewarding, I think, for everybody. And remember, at GREE,
We're by your
By
side.
your side.
Please like or subscribe to our channel at GREE Comfort on YouTube and head over to greecomfort.com/training for more tips and tricks and all the information you need to help you out in the field. And that was a good show.